welcome back to the Between Two Worlds podcast supported by Asian Family Services. We are super lucky to be back here for another episode as part of Asian Family Services suicide prevention work. So for those of you who have been tuning into the podcast, you'll know that we spend this time to talk to different young Asian people, 1.5 and second generation Asian New Zealanders. And today I am very excited to welcome our guest, Starsha Samarasinghe. Welcome.
Kia ora, thank you.
Thank you. Alrighty. So we've actually just been having a bit of a chat outside. One of the things that we like to do before we do our podcast is we'll sort of just catch up and do a bit of a sort of, I don't know, intro chat, I guess. And the good Asians we are, our lovely support person Abi bought us a giant family-sized chicken biryani. Like, that was crazy, guys?
That was
a
enormous.
family of 6.
It
Thanks,
was,
Abby. We appreciate you.
love
heaps.
it, love it. It was like, I reckon that would have been like a 2 or 3 kg biryani. It was crazy. So we are full of rice and chicken and ready to go today.
Perhaps too full, but yeah.
Amazing. All right, Starsha, welcome. It's really nice to have you here.
Thank you.
Starsha and I we cross paths in another area of our work life, so it's quite cool to be sitting here as well. But why don't you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so I've been working in mental health for about 2.5 years now. But yeah, I was born in Sri Lanka to two Sri Lankan parents, and I moved to New Zealand to Lower Hutt in Wellington when I was 2 years old, and lived there for most of my primary school childhood, and then moved up to Auckland. And yeah, I work at Youthline, so I do volunteer work. I manage all the volunteers there and work on the Helpline.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. So did you come up here for high school?
I came up here for high school and some of intermediate, but went back to Wellington a little bit. And
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What was it like growing up in the Hut? Because, I mean, our producer, Ellen, is also from the Hut as well.
Yep.
What was it like there in the 90s and the 2000s?
Yeah, so I moved there in 1997, and it was pretty insular. Like, there wasn't a lot of other Asians. I went to a very small primary school. It was a pretty bougie private school. So I think that's also probably speaks to that. But there were a lot of not a lot of kind of kids that looked like me, I guess. I think I was maybe one of three or four kind of Asian kids in the year.
Okay.
So it was very much felt like my sister, who was just 2 years older than me, was an ally for me in the school. But apart from that, I didn't really see anyone that really looked like me a lot. It wasn't something that was it was the 90s. It wasn't really encouraged to be celebrated or conversations happening.
Yeah. Okay. Why New Zealand?
Well, I've asked my parents this many times, and I think particularly when I was younger, I was like, why not the States? Why not England? Now I'm obviously grateful
God,
that that's
oh
not
my
the
God.
case. Now I'm very grateful for that. They said it was actually a couple things. They said safety was a big thing, because at the time in Sri Lanka it was the civil war. So a lot of families were looking for safe havens, safe places to go. And they had a friend in Lower Hutt in Wellington. So I think that's how a lot of people did immigrate. If they just knew a friend on the other side of the world, they were like, okay, I need to start a community.
Yeah.
If I know at least one person, then that will help. So I think that's just what they did.
Yeah. See, that's crazy. For me to think about that now, right? Having grown up in Auckland and whatnot, thinking about moving halfway across the world because of the reasons that our parents had to, that's mind-boggling to me. That's not something I can compute, because I don't think I'd have the strength to pull that off, to be honest.
I know, it is bonkers. It's something that I kind of look back with a little bit of guilt around, in the sense that as an adult now I can have a lot more empathy and understanding for how hard that would have been. But as a kid, you're just I don't know, you're just have no understanding that they're also brand new in this country, that they're also experiencing it for the first time, possibly dealing with racism and kind of prejudice as well. I just couldn't fathom doing that at my age. Yeah.
Yeah, and leaving family and friends and your whole life.
Everything.
Hard out.
Everything familiar, everything known. Yeah.
Yeah, hard out. We love youth mental health here on the show.
Yes.
We're very, very, very big advocates for youth mental health.
Hell yeah.
How the heck did you end up working in youth mental health?
Well, that's a great question. Sometimes I don't really know myself, but I started working at a not-for-profit right out of uni called ABLE, and that was an accessibility not-for-profit, really cool mahi they did around captioning services and audio description.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, really cool. And did that for a few years, and yeah, realized I really liked working in those kind of like charity, not-for-profit kind of spaces. And I ended up leaving there having like a pretty rough time with my mental health. It really kind of came to a head, and I realized I couldn't stay in full-time work. I needed to just take a big step back. And I did for about a year and a half. I was like unemployed for a bit, and then I went to hospo, which felt like really hard for like high achieving Asian to like start bartending at like
Yep.
27.
Yeah.
So that was weird. And started feeling like a bit more put together, and just saw a job crop up at the mental health organization. I was like, well, if there's any place that will help me kind of like bring me back into the world, surely it's a place like that. And so far it has. So
Love that. Amazing.
Awesome. What was your year of not working like, and how was dealing with what you were going through? Like, how did that play out for you?
yeah, it was really rough. Like I was very lucky to have really good friends around me to kind of support, but it was tough because it wasn't something I necessarily felt I could talk about to, I guess, family and some people in my life because, yeah, I guess a lot of the circles that I was in and my kind of like even my high school, it wasn't really something that was talked about very much. So I didn't really like feel safe or comfortable to talk about it. So it was kind of quite isolating that year. It was strange because I was just used to always just having something on the horizon. It was uni or a job or a project, and just suddenly nothing just felt like a complete regression in my life. I felt like a failure in lots of ways. I think the way I was taught growing up as well is you kind of everything is quantified in like success, right? Like
Yeah.
it's like an achievement, an outcome, productivity. And to suddenly just like reduce that to just, hey, all I need to do is just get through the day was really rough for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who can relate with the high achieving Asian thing, even like the thought of not working for any period of time feels incredibly stressful, because you're
Right.
taught like, well, your parents moved on the other side of the world for you, so you kind of need to honor that by, being able to look after yourself. And I think growing up, I used to be like, oh, my parents just want me to make money because of the status of whatever profession they wanted. But now that I'm a bit older, it's like, oh, they just want you to be okay for the most part. They want you to have a sense of security. They want to know that you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
Um, what did you do in that year?
Yeah, I mean at first I just kind of took the opportunity to do creative projects. Like it was kind of like really idealized for me. I was sort of like, oh, I'll spend the time knitting and crocheting and doing fun things like that. And that sustained me for like a couple months tops. And then obviously that well dries. And I think it's really hard to sustain that kind of creativity when you're feeling so depressed as well. So when that kind of ran short, oh my God, it was just it was honestly like it's kind of a blur thinking back on it, because I think I spent a lot of time in bed. My goals would become things like, hey, open the curtains today. Or like, hey, why don't you just like make your way into the kitchen today? So that's what my days became. And then suddenly it was like months, and it had been like, yeah, about a year. So yeah, as I said, friends really got me through it, particularly my flatmates. But it was, it was rough because I think, constantly in this space of being angry or punishing myself, like with the lack of having anything to do or focus on, or and as you said, that piece of I think you said honoring our parents for that kind of sacrifice they made, and it's something you do hear about. They do talk about it, and just feeling a great sense of guilt around that didn't help.
It's I think, I mean, it's interesting hearing you say that, because this is definitely a process that I've had to work through in the last few years as well. In terms of growing up, I always felt the pressure to I call it stuff, to do stuff, to have stuff, to achieve stuff. And through that process and through doing that so regularly, the amount of stuff I had um, was was directly proportional to how I felt about myself in terms of my self-esteem, my worth as a person. And I've had to do a lot of unlearning in my 20s to realize that it's not my stuff that makes me who I am and makes me worthy. It's actually I am just worthy of myself. And I remember sort of working through that in therapy and going, no, that's not possible. That's not possible. I've always had so much stuff. This is why I'm so worthy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you guys experienced that as well?
Yeah, why do you think I did a PhD at 22? I was so desperate. And then when I finished, I was like, so what now? And there's not a lot of what now. With the kind of state of what was funding was available, I took a community job that I enjoy, and I was no longer like glorifying 60-hour work weeks, like surviving on the
Oh my
crappy
God,
sausage
work-life
roll.
boundaries? What?
The crappy sausage rolls at the dairy next door and like chugging down V like it was my job. And it was weird because it had reached the point that my parents had done enough kind of inner work to be like, we love you just as you are, which I know is a bit of a unicorn.
Excuse me, what?
But I was still like,
what did you just say?
Nah, that's wrong. Like, yeah, I definitely, and still, I think, and I don't know if that feeling will ever go away because I think it's a bit internalized, not just within our Asian culture, but, you know, that like rise and grind culture. What are you even doing if you're not doing 70 push-ups at 2 a.m. in the morning? I don't know. you know the vibe. But regarding kind of getting out of that space, what did that look like for you?
Yeah, I think it looked like, so I didn't like read my parents in as to what was happening at all. I didn't feel like I could, and that's not because they're like, you know, bad people or anything. It was just a conversation we'd never had, and it just didn't, I think, exist in their kind of realm. Like it's just not something that ever kind of existed. It wasn't a conversation we could ever have. So I just never really talked to them. And because of the nature, I think at the time was around COVID as well, I was not in their bubble. So it was actually quite easy for me to just like avoid those conversations because
can't see you legally not allowed.
I'm just being safe. Jacinda told me I couldn't. So
That
yeah,
must have been quite a blessing in disguise for you.
it actually kind of was. And I, you know, I think for them it would have been hard because like, you know, they're really loving parents. I know they do love me a lot, my sister a lot. And so I think for them it was hard, but I think it was actually what I needed in that time to not feel the pressure of having to like exist in a space with them while I was going through that, because I think the added pressure of having to conceal it or pretend or present a certain way or talk about things that I wasn't ready to talk about, and what would have probably been really frustrating, not fruitful conversations at all would have made it so much worse. So I think it was a blessing in disguise in a lot of ways for me. But yeah, so because it was also that bubble thing, pretty isolating was what that year looked like. A lot of dependence and leaning on friends in a way now that I feel really like determined to give back for that and be really kind of grateful for that because they really kind of held me up. And towards the latter part of the year, it became, I guess, more hopeful with, I guess, also with working hospitality. Like it helped me kind of re-enter into the world, connect, realize that I like being social. I like talking to people. It kind of is what fills my cup. Yeah, so that really helped as well.
Amazing, cool. One of the things that we talk quite often alongside this journey of lived experience of mental distress is around our cultural identity, or sort of a lived experience of sort of cultural identity challenges, I guess. Did that play into your distress at all at that time?
I think it did in the sense that just the conversation wasn't like normal for me. Like it wasn't normal to be had. So I think identity is something I've started grappling with kind of more in uni and kind of like a little bit through my 20s. But I think I just lost like complete sense of self in that year. And I think what you were saying before as well, like finding only kind of later in your 20s, the idea that you are worthy just as an individual by yourself without the stuff, right? And I think I just lost complete sense of who I was as a person for that year. And it's only really something I'm rediscovering now. Um, so yeah, I think I did have some like conversations with myself around identity at that time. But I think that was mostly born out of like, hey, usually people don't talk about this. My family never talk about this. I don't have friends that talk about this. Where do I put this? Yeah.
So how would you, I mean, if I asked you that question of would you describe your cultural identity, how would you answer that?
I'm still working on that. I don't know. Like I turned 30 a few months ago, and I feel like it's something I should have a really solid answer for now. But I yeah, I mean, I identify as a New Zealander, a Sri Lankan born New Zealander. When people say, "Hey, where are you from?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm from New Zealand," and then there's the
Where are you
really
really
You don't look New
from?
Zealand.
The
yeah.
classic. And then
Yeah.
I
Oh,
sometimes
but your accent's so
Yeah.
Kiwi.
accent,
Your
Bruh.
yeah.
English is so good.
you speak English really well.
Bruh, it's because I'm better at English than you.
Yeah, I've had the oh, your emails are really articulate. And I'm like, oh
No
my
Oh,
God,
way.
get out.
thanks so much.
Amazing.
Yeah, so and then there's where are you really from? And I'm like, oh, Lower Hutt, to kind of just like, annoy them. But then also, I was born in Sri Lanka, and there used to be for me like a great deal of shame around that. I'm kind of like almost embarrassed to admit that now. Like when I was particularly in primary school, people would say things to me like, oh, you're so white. And I'd be like, thank you. Like I would take it as a genuine compliment, and it would be like high praise for me. And I'd wear that badge with pride, be like, oh, but I'm not brown, guys. Like it's okay. I'm actually white. It's all good. The white people have signed me off. It's all
I got
good.
the approval.
I got the approval.
That's crazy.
I've got the tick. And then honestly, like, embarrassingly late. Like honestly, like the last few years was I like, oh, that's not something I really want to subscribe to anymore. I want to be proud of being Sri Lankan. I don't really know what that looks like yet because I feel quite disconnected from it as a culture. I don't speak the language. I don't know how to cook Sri Lankan food.
Yep.
My parents, when I've asked them why we never learnt the language, they were like, well, we didn't think it would be useful to you in New Zealand. We wanted you to assimilate really well. So I don't feel that connection as much as I'd like to.
Do you go back to Sri Lanka to see your relatives at all?
I've been back probably about 7-8 times in my life.
Okay. What's it like for you when you go there?
So weird.
Yeah.
So weird because I feel caught between the state of like not a tourist but not a local. This doesn't feel like a homecoming for me.
Yeah.
Because I don't speak the language. I don't feel connected to that family at all. Well, I do, but like not in like a real intimate kind of sense. So I feel like a little bit out of sorts when I'm there.
I feel that as well, eh? Like when I go back to Korea, it's not a holiday, it doesn't feel like
It's
a
not a holiday
holiday,
either,
but
though, eh?
Absolutely not.
yeah, and I even though my extended family all tell me, oh, your Korean's great, blah blah blah, I know that I'm not a Hundi because I know I don't feel 100% confident speaking it, and I know I've got a little bit of a New Zealand accent when I speak Korean as well, so I always find myself really going through this conflict of, okay, I'm feeling uncomfortable because I don't feel Korean enough, but at the same time I don't want to be Korean because if I was 100% Korean, that means that I would have had to live the life of growing up in Korea and doing all that stuff, and I don't want to do that because that would have been really difficult for some other parts of my identity.
Yeah.
So it's always difficult, eh? What about you, Lovely?
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same. My Tagalog, if you were talking to a really slow toddler, we could maybe have a conversation, like very slow conversation. And then my parents are from a province, and so my parents speak Kapampangan at home, which is a different dialect, but like not many people from the Philippines from that region are in New Zealand compared to some of the other regions or those who are like Tagalog only speaking. And so the added kind of interesting factor to that is like when we go home to the Philippines, on my dad's side, for example, they all grew up together. They all still live in the same village my dad grew up in. My auntie teaches at the high school that they all 12 of them went
Wow.
to. And so they're also just connected because they all grew up together, and we're like the only weird family that didn't grow up in the Philippines. And so we sort of feel that at like a second level. And I remember having a conversation with my cousin because I can understand Tagalog pretty well. And she was talking at quite a deep level. And I could tell that we were talking about something really deep, but for the life of me, I had no idea what we were talking about. And it was like that deep, like when you're in your early 20s and you're just like feeling sad.
feeling
I
your
mean, you're feeling your
feels.
feelings.
Yeah.
And we were definitely talking about some identity crisis of some kind.
Sure.
And I just sat there like, because I just had no idea what she was saying because I don't converse like that in Tagalog. And so it's always really interesting going back. And I don't want to say I don't enjoy it, but it's not a holiday because my parents
Sure.
don't live in the pretty parts of the Philippines. So whatever your image of the Philippines, that's not where I'm from.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's so right. It doesn't feel like a holiday because I feel like every time I'm there, sure, like sometimes there's like a visit to a lovely hotel and like lovely beach and that kind of stuff. But you do all like the family visitations. You do all like the auntie's house, the whole like you were this big when I last saw you kind of vibe.
Yeah,
And
I'm
you don't feel
somehow
any
related to
connection.
you,
Yeah,
but I
it
don't
doesn't
actually
resonate.
know why.
Totally.
Yeah, 100%. It's super interesting, and I think as we go forward, there's so many people in our generation, whether you were born here, whether you were born overseas and grow up here, and I'm really interested to see how that plays out in terms of like collective cultural identity as we all get older and like as our generation starts having kids and whatnot. Yeah.
Interesting for sure. And I think it's also if you've talked about kids, and I mean, none of us are parents, but it's also interesting to think about the ways in which, like, would you want your kids to know the language, or your future
Yeah.
kids that don't exist at this current point in time?
Yeah, my hypothetical kids that are unlikely to ever be into existence. But yeah, I would I think so. I think because I remember, I guess, so much about how much shame I felt around it, and I wouldn't want. I mean, it was very unfun to be feeling that. So I wouldn't want a child to feel that. And I would want them to feel a connection. And I have heard like a friend talk about how when they had a kid, they then felt a sense of connection to their culture that they hadn't felt before until they had a child, because they were able to kind of like live it through their child in ways that they'd wished had been for them in their childhood, if that makes
Cool.
sense.
Yeah.
So like, who knows? Maybe that would be something that would happen. And it could be more of like a finding of my own cultural identity through a child or something. Yeah.
I hear what you're saying earlier of like you don't cook Sri Lankan food, you don't speak the language, but what are some things that you do in your life, whether it's beliefs or practices or whatever, that you feel like are kind of uniquely Sri Lankan or uniquely Sri Lankan New Zealand for you?
Yeah. Oh, good question. I don't know. I think maybe connection to parents is a big thing. I think responsibility and obligation to parents is. I think that's a wider Asian kind of thing, not specifically Sri Lankan, but that's maybe something that I feel like I do as a New Zealand Sri Lankan. Like I'm not saying that my like Pakeha friends aren't doing this, but I'm making an effort to go see them as much as as much as I can, and help them out where I can and things like that. I do love Sri Lankan food. Don't get me wrong. I just can't cook for anything. So I think little ways like that, and I think through advocacy as well, and through just wanting to stay engaged. I'm trying to see what's happening in Sri Lanka. I'm trying to be informed as much as I can on it, given I don't know much about the cultural context. I'm still trying my best to be informed about it.
Yeah.
And I think that helps me feel engaged as like a Sri Lankan New Zealander.
Yeah. The service that I manage, we work in primary and intermediate schools, and I was in a school the other week, and the kids were introducing themselves and their sort of cultural backgrounds and stuff, and we had this one little girl say something like, "My mum's from here and my dad's from here." Bear in mind, this kid's like 7 or 8 years old.
Yeah.
She goes, "My mum's from here and my dad is from here, but I am 100% New Zealand." And it was just, I was like, yes, get it,
Wow.
girl. Do you want to come
Yeah.
to the podcast?
Yeah.
That's so cute. That's cool. And I think that's the beauty of, and I say this as someone who hyperfixated on 1.5 and second gen ethnic identity as my PhD. Like, part of what is, I don't want to say beautiful because I don't want to romanticize how hard it can be, but part of what the opportunity that we get as people who grew up in New Zealand is that we get to figure out whatever being Sri Lankan, kind of the wide diaspora of Asian or Korean or Filipino, what that means for us, and the parts of the culture that maybe aren't necessarily like the most healthy or feel the safest, we can be like respectfully, that's not what we want to choose to take on. And other parts, like you said, like being close to family, those are things that we can then kind of attach our values to, which I think is really awesome.
Totally. Yeah.
Y'all, I gotta ask, do you take your shoes off in the house?
No.
Oh,
I know.
bruh.
I just do it because
Yeah.
my husband gets mad if I don't.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair. Is this like a
Okay.
flatting thing?
Yeah, so at the flat, I think it's because I live with two men, and so things are kind of always at a general level of like not okay.
All right, you guys, you flatties, are you listening?
And like we've got like it's very cold. It's a very cold place. So yeah, unfortunately I do keep shoes on. Parents' house a little bit less so.
Fair.
Because I just got more respect for their house than my own.
Yeah. All right, I gotta ask as well, because my mum absolutely berates me for this. Do you guys wash your fruit and veggies before you cook with them or eat them?
No.
I do not.
I don't
My mum
either.
gets so mad, but
My
I do
mum
not.
gets so angry. Yeah. She
don't-
thinks I'm going to get like the sixth finger or something.
Yeah, I haven't yet, so I think I'm
Yeah.
gonna just keep doing it.
Okay, good. I
Well,
feel
my
it.
mum doesn't cook, so she doesn't really get a say in
Yeah.
how I
True.
choose to feed myself.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, no, she gets really angry. I'll just kind of take something straight from the fridge and eat it, and she's like, "What are you doing? No, that's disgusting." But no, absolutely not.
And I feel like we're okay. Like, of all the places I could get sick, fruit and veggie might be the last
Builds
place.
up the immune system.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Totally.
And so, I mean, we've kind of talked about lots of different bits and pieces, and going back to, I guess, that year of isolation and kind of going through it, kind of a couple of years later, where would you say you are on kind of your mental well-being journey now? A few years removed, working in this space. Yeah, whereabouts do you think you're at?
Yeah, I'm actually like, I feel like this is something we don't do very well in New Zealand, like, tautoko to ourselves, but like I'm really proud of myself for where I am now.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I do like credit kind of working at a mental health org as a big part of that because it really normalizes sort of like talking about it as well. But I think where I'm at now is a really good place, but I just have to be really on top of it. Like I'm have developed really good, I think, self-awareness around detecting if I can feel myself having a bit of a low or kind of like slipping into a space where I don't necessarily want to be. I just have to be really good at kind of detecting it, seeing myself through it, having my support systems and my self-care practices in place to kind of see myself through. And I think I'm at a point that I can do that pretty well. So I wouldn't
It's
say I'm
awesome.
without those moments, but I can just see
Mm.
myself through them better.
All right, counsellor hat on for a second. We love open conversations here. Should we ever chat about each of our early warning signs?
I
Yeah.
don't eat. I'm an undereater. So
Okay,
if I
okay.
start not eating, and it's like now I've been married for like just under almost a year, and having someone living with me now who can be like, "Hey, are you gonna have breakfast?" And I'm like, "No, I'm fine." And then I'm like, "Nah, dang it, I'm not fine."
Yeah.
Not eating,
Good
not
to
sleeping.
know.
If I'm gonna do the doom scroll,
Yep.
I get really into like a YouTube short.
Yes.
For me, it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the roller coaster
Yes.
YouTube shorts where they're like rating all the different roller coasters. A couple of weeks ago, actually,
Random.
a couple of weeks, it got worse. A couple of weeks ago, I got really into, or the algorithm got me to, is it those videos when like the soldiers return back from like
Oh, the
service?
military returns
and
to
the
the
dogs?
And
dogs?
it's always that Twilight song that
Okay. Is it the kids or the dogs?
it's the kid when they're like meeting their dads and
Yeah,
stuff, and
yeah.
or
Oh, the
like the
Twilight
dads.
song.
Surprise
Um,
them at their like
1,000
school
years.
ball or whatever.
I'm not gonna sing it.
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
that
and
one.
it's always that song,
Yeah.
and it's always like there's always crying, and I'm just like sitting there in my bed at like 1 a.m. like,
Oh my
The
god.
dog ones get me.
yeah.
The
Oh, they're
dog
so
Those are
ones,
my
yeah.
warning signs. What about you?
Yeah. I definitely the sleep one for me. So I get up at 5:30 and I go to the gym every day. It's been a really important part of my routine for years and years and years. And if one is to wake up at 5:30, then they need to go to sleep at a decent time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even the time that I go to sleep, it's what I'm saying to myself about why I'm on my phone later. Oh, nah, you'll be okay. Just have an extra coffee in the morning. Or like, nah, you'll manage. You've done it before. Remember when you used to go? And I can see this stuff coming. So that's a huge one for me because I am someone who really relies on sleep to feel well and feel
Right.
energized. I think another one is around my work-life boundaries start to slip immensely. So working in mental health and holding a couple of roles in mental health, my work-life boundaries are the thing that make me so effective at my job because I can really compartmentalize when it is I need to give all of myself into my mahi
Yeah.
and when it is that's my personal time.
Mhm.
And when that starts to slip, that's a huge red flag for me. What about you?
For me, two big things. I think disengaging with friends and like sort of social. Like I will just stop replying. I will take so long to get back to people. I'll just withdraw, and I'll notice that start to happen. And that's really, I think, a pretty dangerous territory for me because that's a big part of the self care is connection with friends. And then mess and clutter. Like I'll just notice that the kind of like the pile of clothes, the doom chair in your room of the pile of
Yeah.
that will just kind of exponentially grow. Things
Yeah.
will just like be on the floor for a bit longer than they should.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
The chair also has another name that I cannot mention on this podcast, but we can talk about it afterwards. Okay,
Okay,
guys.
I'm excited.
Yeah, put a pin in that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
mess is a big one for me, and also forgetting things. Like if I'm forgetting meetings, if I'm forgetting catch ups with friends. Like there was this one week where I had got the times wrong for 2 catch ups and 2 work things, and I was like, "Oop, things are not good."
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is a sign for sure because like your brain space, like it's so hard to find space in it for stuff like that, for dates and calendars and times and stuff when
Totally.
you've got so much going on.
Yeah, adulting's hard enough as it is, eh?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I know we've talked a little bit about this before, Starsha, and it's so cool to hear the different kind of, tools, yeah, I say that with sort of quote marks, but the different kind of mechanisms that you employ in your life, because it looks different for all of us, but also there's also an element of kind of universalism in that a lot of the concepts that underpin those things that are helpful for us are, for most people, there's a level of sort of helpfulness there. So for you, when you do notice like those early warning signs, for example, what are those go-to things that you do to like get your ship back on track and get your A into G and get all your ducks in a row?
Yeah, I think for me it's I guess communicating. I've got a really good relationship I think with like my manager and like my flatmates, and I think it's like asking for help a little bit, like just being like, "Hey, I'm having like a really rough time at the moment. So if you guys just like help me out a little bit with the kitchen, like that'd be really great." And I'm really lucky and fortunate that I've got good relationships with people around me that I can do that and ask for help. And I think it's work-life balance is a big thing for me as well. It is a really important thing for me to maintain. So if I'm able to take like a step back for an afternoon or for a morning or for a couple hours just to like one thing, pick up a few things off the floor of the room,
Yep.
just do some folding, something like that, just to even just visually declutter, it helps my brain declutter a bit as well.
Yeah,
Something
yeah.
like that. Yeah.
Love that. Okay, let's just talk about this concept of reaching out for help as well.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
about to ask. How is that? Are you naturally someone who is just like, yeah, I think I need a hand. I'm going to ask someone, or what was that journey to
No.
being comfortable to reach out for
Yeah,
help?
I think I developed that during my year of kind of isolation and
Is that how you frame it?
depression.
You're like, this is the chapter.
Yeah, like if I
okay.
refer to it with friends, I'm like, oh, that year. They're like, oh yeah,
Yes,
I know
yes,
that
yes.
That
year,
year,
that
yeah.
year, yeah, the year you just kind of checked out. I'm like, yeah, that's the one. I think I developed that skill over the year because not consciously, it's because I just had to. It was just a survival thing. I was forced to rely on people in ways I hadn't before, so I just had to ask for help. It was really hard in terms of pride and also a lot of kind of values instilled in you, I think through Asian families as well, around kind of like doing it yourself, not necessarily asking for help, not necessarily being vulnerable in that way. So that was really tough. But I think I developed that really key skill through that year. And it's something I still kind of carry with me now. And I would say it's like been an enormous help for like getting my mental health back on track.
Amazing. We love that.
Is there things that you find easier to ask for help for, like practical things versus like asking help for emotional? Is there like a tier risk of like I can ask for help for this, but like this one's a little bit harder, or
Yeah.
generally you're
I
pretty?
think I've had to like figure out that people aren't mind readers, and the way I need to ask for help has to be like specific and intentional. So even like around, hey, could we just help with the kitchen? Like a really specific request. So that like when it's done, I can like see exactly, oh, that thing is done. Therefore, I'm feeling a little bit better. I found if I just kind of like asked for help, just kind of shouted help into the void, no one could pick up on that. It had to be like specific, like, could you please help me with this specific thing? And that was really helpful because it also made me stop and think what would be helpful. It made me
Yeah.
like prioritize and kind of be like, oh, this actual thing would be helpful for me. Can someone else hold that for now? Yeah.
I can see you rocking a Canva flat chore roster. Is that
Oh,
a bit
I
of you?
wish. I absolutely wish I did. We had one during COVID. We had like a whiteboard. But like no, never. I'm hopeless. I wish I was that girl. Oh my God. Do love Canva though.
Oh, who doesn't?
Love it. I am curious around your work at Youthline and whether you sort of have any conversations with your colleagues or notice any things on the helpline around Asian young people calling in and any sort of particular sort of cultural things that come up there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Something we see a lot is, and I really feel for these young people, they'll be saying something like, um, oh, I feel this way, but my family don't believe in mental health, or like there is no way I can tell my parents. We sort of we do like to check in about kind of support systems, who in your kind of circle, who in your life can support you through this, and usually it's like, oh, I can't tell anyone, and that's so deeply sad for me to hear because I get it, and I'm like, yeah, I hear you, and I mean, I only really had I could only figure that out with myself at like 27, 28, let alone these like young people who were like, 12, 14 years old. So yeah, we see that a lot. And I think something that I guess as mental health professionals we need to be more cognizant of is those cultural differences that you can't really say, I don't know. I feel like sometimes people say things like, "Oh, just tell your mum no," or just tell her like,
Oh my
and it's
gosh.
like,
I
I
hated
can't do
it when
that.
people told me that.
It was
They're like, just have a chat with your parents. I was
Yeah.
like, do you not think I've considered that?
Yeah, it was like, "Oh, you have a right to this, or you have a right to shut your door," and it's like, no,
Not in this house.
no,
we
no,
don't.
no.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I think I remember hearing things like that as a young person and like how deeply unhelpful things like that from friends and teachers were. So I'm just so aware if someone says on the helpline to be like, nah. Like that is so deeply unhelpful for a young person to hear from an Asian family. You have to consider their cultural background. And I think we've got a lot of work to do in that area. We do really well at it, but I think there's more we could do as well.
Yeah.
Just that cognizance of the differences. and relationships to mental health. Yeah.
Do you find that having that Asian New Zealand background for you changes the way that you sort of support your staff around those, especially those non-Asian staff as well, and having those conversations? Does it bring a different, like a depth of view maybe around those cultural nuances?
I think it really does. I think it does. I think a lot of orgs are really good at cultural competency, are good at those conversations at cultural competency. But I think my personal lived experience has given me special insights into it. So I work really closely with volunteers. So it is something I think they really appreciate hearing it as well, like a fresh perspective. And I'm like, hey, just consider how this might sound to someone who's never had a conversation about mental health before, or consider how might this sound to someone who has a really bad institutional mistrust of doctors or your healthcare or mental health places. Just consider what that might look like. And I think I'm able to maybe think that way because of my lived experience. As an Asian New Zealander.
That's cool. I love how, the parents not believing in mental health or different ethnicities not believing in mental health. Like, mental health is like our version of white people's Loch Ness monster. Like, is it real?
Is it real?
Not? We don't know.
I have a blurry photo of it somewhere, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Never heard about it like that, but that's a good way to put it. In terms of, I guess, thinking about young people, and what advice would you give to your younger self, looking back at your 14, 15-year-old self? What would you say? What would you offer?
Yeah. Oh, poor thing.
Oh, baby
Poor
Starsha.
She was doing her best.
What was she up to? What was she up to at
what did she
14,
look- yeah.
15?
At 14, 15, I think she was actually thriving. I think she was
We love that for her.
I kind of peaked around
Nah, come on. The 30s are your best years yet. Come
no,
on.
they're ahead. But I remember being very happy around year 10, year 11. I think before the pressure of uni and decisions and adulthood kind of set in. But no, I think I would tell her to not be embarrassed. I was so embarrassed of culture. And to be fair, a lot of that is stuff that was kind of imposed on me. The classic, you bring your Sri Lankan food to lunch and then someone's like, what's that smell?
Yeah.
You're like, nothing.
You're like, it's called more than salt and pepper, bro.
Yeah, sorry, it's got some flavor, okay?
Sorry, it's not a sandwich,
Sorry,
guys.
ham sandwich. Yeah, no, exactly.
Luncheon sandwich on Whitebeard.
Oh, yeah, luncheon,
Fuck, I used to be so jealous, because I never had a luncheon sandwich. I've never, still to this day, I've never eaten a luncheon sandwich.
Right,
I feel
Abby, did you get
disappointed.
that?
Yeah, I mean, luncheon. I learned the other day that luncheon's bologna. The thing that Americans talk about as bologna is just luncheon.
Yep.
Oh, okay, you knew
It's
that?
really
Okay.
not worth the
It's such a
hype.
gross word.
It's
luncheon.
Luncheon, bologna. It's gross. But yeah, I think I'd tell her just to not be ashamed, because I just spent so much headspace and so much energy and time on that, which is just time wasted. Yeah, and to I don't know, embrace, I guess, my parents more, embrace the culture more, would be a big thing. And I guess also hey, things are going to get rough in a few years, but lean on your friends, lean on family. You can do that.
I love that. That's cool. It's really cool to hear your journey of sort of how you've come back to your, you've done this kind of full circle journey. It's really, really cool. Amazing. Alrighty. Well, I think that's actually our time, and that's gone incredibly quickly. We've really
So
enjoyed
fast.
talking to you today,
So
Starsha.
awesome. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, hard out. Well, we have a little bit of Lovely and I have a bit of a tendency to collect friends along the way of when we do these types of projects. So hopefully we'll
We've
get
trapped
to.
her.
Yeah, collect me.
Hopefully we'll get to do some stuff with you soon. But thanks so much again for coming
thank
on
you
the
so much.
podcast
Of
today.
course. Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. See you later.
Bye.